All right, so the next kind of pair of connectors that I want to look at for Power Platform are the Excel connectors. So it's actually not a pair. There's actually multiple connectors for Excel that are available to you. And I'll kind of briefly hit on each of them, but the one I'm going to kind of focus the most on today is the Excel Online for Business connector. But just to kind of talk about the Excel connectors in general. So for the most part, there's kind of four connectors to keep an eye on as far as Power Automate goes. And three of them are provided by Microsoft. And then there's also an old deprecated one that's provided by Microsoft that isn't supported anymore. It doesn't really work. And it is still listed in the connectors. You'll see Excel deprecated, and that one actually was nicer because it had more features than the ones that they provide now have. But that's kind of a side issue altogether. But as far as the connectors that are provided by Microsoft, there are two for Power Automate Online, and then there's one for Power Automate Desktop. So the two that are provided for Excel as far as Power Automate Cloud goes, there's Excel Online for Business, which allows you to connect to applications that are tied to your business account. And then there's the Excel Online OneDrive. And the Excel Online OneDrive is for personal Microsoft accounts and allowing you to connect to Excel files that are in your personal account. So really, that's the biggest difference between the two. Again, feature-wise, it's a lot like To Do. They are fairly identical as far as the features go. And to be honest, the features that are available for Excel Online are not great. It lets you do some basic stuff, and I'll kind of talk through that as I go. But it doesn't let you do a whole lot with Excel applications, and there's a lot of limitations that I'll kind of talk through here in a second. The biggest thing to remember is that if you need to work heavily with Excel on Power Automate, there's really two approaches that you should consider. I mean, if you're doing occasional work and you're finding the limitations that I'll kind of outline, then you can use the Excel Online connectors. But if you need to do a lot of heavy work with Excel spreadsheets, then there's two that I would recommend. You can either use the Power Automate Desktop version of Excel and work with like in a VM with Power Automate Desktop. The desktop connector is far superior in every way to the Excel Online connectors. The only limitation is that you have to use it through Power Automate Desktop. Then there's a third-party connector that Encodian provides, which is if you need to use Power Automate Cloud and work with Excel on that in sort of a heavy fashion, then I absolutely recommend that you pay for the third-party Encodian license and the subscription to their service and do that. If you only need to like occasionally hit an Excel file, like you got a process that runs a couple times a day or something like that, then the Excel Online might be fine. So let's kind of pop over here and look at some of the documentation around that. Okay, here's the documentation for the OneDrive version. Again, this is the personal account one. And there are details in there, and there are some limitations and things like that. I'm not really going to spend much time on that. As far as the actions go, it's fairly similar to what we'll see with the business side, although the business one has a little bit more. So let's pop over here to the business one. So what we have here is the Excel Online for Business, and this is the one that's provided by Microsoft. There are some issues to kind of keep in mind, and I want to highlight some of these as you're going through it. One is that the data might not always be up to date. There's sometimes a delay of a few minutes. There are also limits, so you can only get up to a certain amount of rows at a time. It's hard to apply some filters to that kind of thing. The biggest limitation with the Excel Online connectors, both of them, is that you can't work with all the data in a spreadsheet. You can only work with data that's in a defined table in a spreadsheet. that is by far the biggest limitation. The original Excel connector that they provided lets you work with pretty much any data in your Excel spreadsheet, but that's no longer the case. And as I say, that connector is deprecated. You can't use it anymore. It doesn't work. So you have to kind of make do with the limitations that are out there. There are some things to remember. One is it's very easy for files in your business Excel Online business account to have to get errors back, especially if you try to hit it a lot. So a lot of times you'll see if the spreadsheet's in read-only mode, you'll get a 502 error. If the account that you're accessing it doesn't have write access, you'll get a forbidden. So you can't use an account that only has read access to a file. There's a maximum file size of 25 megabytes. And here's the biggest one is an Excel file may be locked for up to 6 minutes. I've seen it happen for longer. I've seen it as long as 10 minutes since the last time you used it with a connector. That's the biggest limitation by far with the Excel Online connectors is, on top of only being able to access data in tables, but if you're trying to frequently hit the spreadsheet in your Excel Online, your process is going to fail. So like I say, it's fine if you've got something where you're only hitting it, maybe a couple times a day, 3 times a day, whatever it might be, or even once an hour is probably okay. But if you've got a process that needs to hit it over and over and over and over again, you can't use this process. Invest in the Encodian account. You're going to have to, or Power Edit Automate Desktop. So it only supports the XLSX. So if you have older files, like the .xls, those are not supported. So you need to make sure it's a newer file for Excel. It generally has to be in your OneDrive. You can make it work with other stuff, but it has to be something that your Excel Online, which is pretty much tied to OneDrive, has access to. And there are some other things you can read through the documentation as far as that goes. Special characters that can really mess up mess up your connector. So if you've got special characters anywhere in your spreadsheet, not even just the column names, but I've seen it in the data itself. If you've got unusual characters in the data, I've seen it throw all kinds of weird errors that are hard to track down. So it has a lot of limits, and there's throttling limits of 100 calls every 60 seconds. So if you're doing a lot of back, even if it's just one connection, or you're just using it once, but if it's hitting it a bunch of stuff and doing a bunch of things, then you run into some issues. So you can add a key column to a table. You can add a row into a table. You can create a data table in your Excel workbook. I've kind of had hit or miss success with that. You can create a worksheet, and it's great. But if, as I say, the actual data, you can only access data that's in a table. You have to have that data defined in a table. You can't just hit random, row, column, data cells and have it work. It's only in the table because that's how you access the data is through that table. So like here, list rows present in a table. That's the only way to get the data out of it. Get a row using a key column. Of course, that key column has to be part of the table. So it's not great. It's not ideal. It's not freeform. Whereas, again, with the Encodian or the Power Automate Desktop, you can hit any data, in any cell, anywhere in your spreadsheet. So that's the biggest thing to keep in mind. So just kind of a look at that. So I will show you here. So for instance, I've got a flow that posts to my social media accounts, like once a day or something like that. It picks a random connector from this spreadsheet that I've got here. So I've got this spreadsheet that has a table, and it's got a reference to an icon name, a couple of information about the connector itself. So is this a preview mode? Is it is it Microsoft or independent? Is it deprecated connector? Last modified is basically the last time I posted about that. There's a summary and a title and things like that. So there's various pieces of information that I have about a connector. and it uses that information to post to social media. So I've got those pieces there. So this is the spreadsheet, and it's in a table that I have named something. Oh, connectors. The name of the table is the connectors. So if I go back over here to my Power Automate and look at the flows here, and I'll show you the flow that I've created that works with that data in that spreadsheet. So this is my did you know? So basically it's saying, did you know Power Automate can connect to this? Did you know Power Automate can connect to that? That's the kind of thing that's in there. So here we go. Let's open this up. So let's start with, so it runs, it actually runs every 3 days right now. I kind of reduced it a little bit because I thought it was going a little too often. So the first thing it does is it's using the Excel Online for Business connector. It's connecting to this connectors spreadsheet that I have and the table that's named connectors. And it's ordering that by last modified descending. So it's basically saying, okay, get me the 25 oldest records in that spreadsheet because I'm doing a top 25. So it's basically, it's going to get this list of 25 connectors that I haven't posted in a long time. And maybe I should, bump that up because there are more than 1,000 connectors now. So, doing it every 3 days, it's going to take 4 years to get through all the connectors that are out there. But anyway, but it's got this. So I'm going through here. So I'm setting up a variable. So I want to be able to pick a row out of that top 25. And then we'll say, okay, get for me. Let's look at the formula here. So it's out of this list of rows that came out of the Excel. Find me, picked a random number and says, find me that row from that spreadsheet. So this is comes out in the selected row. It's a compose action. And then I've got another compose here that says, okay, from that, get me the values that are in there. So I've got, this schema here that defines the row data that's coming out of my list of rows. And saying, okay, get for that, tag, internal ID, give me the name, the icon information, preview, all these various pieces of information that are in that spreadsheet. And then the next thing I want to do is build the content of my my social media post. So saying, okay, did you know Power Automate can connect to this? So grabbing the name, give me the summary, and say, it's more than one of more than 1,000 connectors available. Add some, hashtags and so on. Then for, each of the social medias, so I've got Mastodon, Blue Sky, and LinkedIn that it's posting to. So it's got to do a little bit of different things for each of those. And I won't go through that. I've gone through, in other videos, I've talked about posting to social media, and you can go check out some of those other videos on my channel. But the last thing here is going back and updating the Excel spreadsheet. So say, okay, now that I've posted about it, I need to update my spreadsheet so that I know that, this is the date, the last time that I posted about that. And, now it needs to be updated so that it doesn't get posted to again. So it kind of drops down to the bottom of the list. So we've got this. So again, connecting to my spreadsheet, connecting to that table. And the key column is the name. So in this particular case, the name is unique. So that's the one I'm using as a key column. And the key value I'm pulling in from the records up here. From my selected row, I'm pulling out the name. So from that, and then saying, okay, update my last updated column to UTC now. So last modified here is the column that I'm updated, and I'm going to set that to UTC now. So when you're actually adding that step, you select what column it is that you're updating, or the piece of information that you're updating. So let me show you an example here. So Excel Online Business. So I want to do update a row, just to show you how that works. So okay, so I'm connecting my connectors file. It'll get the list of tables from that spreadsheet. And we'll select connectors, Once I select that, then I select the key column, which, there we go, name, and then the value. So I'm pulling the value from elsewhere. So going back up here. And where are you at? List row's name. And then under here, under the advanced properties, here's where you set, what it is that you want to update. So go last modified, and then the value that you're going to put in there. In this particular case, we want UTC now. So that's what it would go through and do. So creating that update command to send it back to updating the row. And I'm not going to save this, but it's fairly simple and straightforward. The biggest thing, like I say, is you got to remember is it has to be part of a defined data table within that spreadsheet. It can't be just a random cell. It can't be in a random worksheet. It's got to be there as part of that defined table, which is irritating and annoying. Especially if you're having to work with spreadsheets as you frequently do in business. A lot of times you have to work with spreadsheets that you don't have any control over how that spreadsheet is created and defined. And most of the time people aren't using defined data tables when they create spreadsheets of data for various things. That spreadsheet might be coming from a third party, it might be coming from the business somewhere, or somebody's creating it on their computer. They're not going to structure that spreadsheet in the way that the developer needs. And this has been the biggest complaint of this connector for as long as it's been around, since they got rid of the original connector. But again, if you have the ability to use Power Automate Desktop, have a license for that, then that's great. You can put it in there because that will let you access any row, any data cell. Otherwise, you're going to have to invest in an Encodium license for their Excel connector, because that again that'll let Power Automate Cloud work with any part of data in a spreadsheet. So that's it. That's the brief overview, because there's really not much else that you can do with the Microsoft provided connectors for Excel, for at least for Power Automate Online Cloud. And again, same thing for Logic Apps, because it's the same connector for Logic Apps. And with Logic Apps, it's even worse because you don't have access to Power Automate Desktop for Logic Apps. You don't have that as an option. So if you need to work with any kind of data with a Logic app, you're going to have to invest in the Encodium. That's really pretty much all there is to it. So if you go over here to the Encodium documentation for their connector, you can see you have to get an account, and there's a subscription required to use their Flower connector. And it is nice. And there is a free license which lets you do a limited amount of work per month. And I haven't messed around with it too much, but for that you're going to need the API key, and for that you can do almost anything that you need to do in a spreadsheet. You can work with headers, you can work with rows, you can parse CSV files. There just aren't the limitations that the Microsoft connector limits you to. So that's that's it. That's things to keep in mind if you want to work with Excel spreadsheets with your Power Automate workflows or Power Apps. So they're definitely, like I say, if you need to do some simple stuff, that's great. Otherwise, you're gonna have to invest. That's just all there is to it. Thank you.